Hey everybody, happy Wednesday. To be frank, it's not been a happy Wednesday at all. It's actually been a very crappy Wednesday. With everything that happened in Texas, it's, on top of Buffalo right before that. I think this one hit me definitely a little harder just because of, the stepdaughter's presence in my life. And the work meeting today was not so jovial, and it's just everybody, it's heavy on everybody's heart. We've done many different shows on these topics, unfortunately. We're talking with James Neese about why a lot of guys are alienated and stuck in some of these tunnels, and how to stop mass shootings, which you can find, in the main feed. And we'll talk a little bit more about the shooting over the, on the weekend. I'm going to be honest, it just seems like a very ghoulish thing to jump right into politics, and I think it's a big, and I know that lefty people kind of say, oh, that's just an excuse, but I think they don't understand that sometimes people do actually need a little time to grieve. There just seems to be a segment of the population that wants to rush to politics the second everybody is discombobulated and upset. I am not one of those people. If I don't know what I want to say about something, then I don't say it. If I don't have somebody that's going to speak intelligently about a topic, I'm not going to do it. And so I thought tonight I'd just do something a little bit silly. And, we moved into this house, and I'm going to give you a little bit of a tour of the house. Not a big tour because it's a little messy and my wife might kill me, but I mostly wanted to show you my garden, what I've been working on. So it took me a little bit I used some of my spare episodes through late April, early May, just so I could garden. And I think it's really important at some points to just kind of embrace some simplicity. And I want to kind of expand on the topic of just shrinking your field of vision a little bit. I decided last night, what would it take to live a simpler life? And I think the thing that stresses me out the most is the amount of voices that I constantly see on social media. So I deleted the apps from my phone. I don't know how long they'll stay off. When I've tried this before, they're back within 2 or 3 hours. But so far, 24 hours going strong. And I guess I just don't need that many opinions in my life. And if I miss a couple trends in doing this show, then that's okay. I just think it's important to control what you can control and not be upset about the things that you cannot control. You've got to really give your focus and attention to the people that need you and care about you, so you don't miss warning signs. This kid was in a lot of trouble, made a couple of posts beforehand that he was going to do this. And everybody that was responsible for him in his life let him down. And I don't know. So we'll talk more about that Saturday. But so I wanted to just kind of give you a little bit of a tour of, I've got a very happy life. The only thing that ever bums me out is reading the news and seeing what's going on in the world. And we rented this house in August or September in the middle of Indianapolis. We have a lot of great neighbors. Very multi-ethnic neighborhood, very mixed income neighborhood. And it is it's a Fall Creek place in Indianapolis, if you want to look it up. I'm not going to tell you my address, but it's the most, neighborly place I've ever lived. There's the guy who arranges the trash cans on trash day for people, and the guy who, hey, give me your phone number, you leave your garage door open, let me do that. I mow my neighbor's lawn, they mow my lawn. It's just been a really nice place to live, and I have great neighbors. And it's kind of like a little treehouse. I'm on my front porch, actually. So let me kind of just walk you around. Clean fun that you can kind of take your mind off of things. Got some wildflowers planted here. The American flag, my race flags. So just to kind of give you a feel for the street here. That's one way and another way. This is interesting. You'll see this sign, no Espero, all across town. And about 2 blocks up and 1 block over, they're thinking about putting in a housing addition for homeless folks. and the neighborhood is pretty upset about it. This is a up-and-coming neighborhood that's kind of had, you know, my office is up there, kind of had an up-and-coming feel to it for a long time. Like, there's a park right over here that used to be abandoned buildings. And one neighbor I talked to said, you know, it's been 20 years of trying to get this neighborhood, almost 30 years of trying to get this neighborhood. You know, my property value is going up, and she's like, now you're just going to have needles in the alley where our kids play, and they're pretty mad about it. So I don't know what's going to happen, but the neighbors have activated like yard signs and door knockers and petitions and all that stuff, just to kind of keep the neighborhood safe and clean and not letting it slip back to where it was 15 years ago, where it was a pretty dangerous. Even 5 years ago, our neighbors had regular break-ins, and this housing addition basically would just put in housing for people who are experiencing homelessness, and maybe there'd be a guard, but there's no wraparound services. You're 20 blocks from any job opportunities or anything else. And so they're just kind of dumping them on the neighborhood. And it's a developer from San Antonio that people don't like. I'll quickly go through here now. Wife isn't around, so this is our living room. This is the part I decorated. Training potty. There's Squish's toy corner back there. And then this is the table I grew up doing my homework on. And then upstairs is my office. I'll show you that in a little bit. And then downstairs is the playroom and the cable cave. I'll show you that too. This is our kitchen. It's very messy. We have not cleaned it yet. Bathroom, laundry, all that stuff. Guess who peed last? So this is the backyard. Got my Blackstone here. Do a lot of bacon and eggs and pancakes and especially smash burgers on it. It's been raining off and on today. So we got a garage in the back, and this, let me just turn this. So here's the back steps, and I've been planting all of this stuff. We're renters, so I didn't want to build like, you know, raised beds, but I found these fabric bags on Amazon and have started doing a bunch of planting. These are kind of, they've flowered, and then some are about to sprout again. All kinds of different plants. I do not recommend the $3 pots from Lowe's. They have not worked out well. But here's a planter and flowers and all that stuff. So these fabric bags are really cheap on Amazon. Blueberries, roses, and Squish has been helping me plant. And so she planted these beans. And of the 8 bean seeds, this is what remains. And then here's our onion section. These things are like doubling in size every week. So these are my green onions and standard onion sets. And there's chives that are growing. And this is my neighbor's yard. I don't have a neighbor yet. So I basically just aggressed against him and took over his or her new bed here. And we planted Squish's sunflower seeds for them. So when they move in, they'll have some nice flowers if somebody moves in this summer. And, you know, I just colonize it, and we use this. Got a nice little setup here. Eleanor's best friends live over there. Mrs. Kim, who helped start all the Korean restaurants in town, lives here, and she's cool with the kids playing in their yard. And then kind of in the back, we've got, you know, kids living in all these little neighborhoods. So open the garage. So we got mint, and these just were little plants like 3 weeks ago, and they've just sprouted up like crazy. Peppermint, spearmint, 2 types of thyme and sage, and catnip. And this is my garage. It's just full of junk. Here's the big green egg. If you have the money for a big green egg, I cannot recommend it enough. It's amazing. You know, and just typical garage stuff, just junk, kid tent, you know, the messy tools and all that good stuff. I really need to like go and clean it out, but I have not done that yet. The electric grill that Harry used to make fun of me for And this is, book boxes. These are full of books and magazines and office supplies and all kinds of stuff. You may not believe this, but I'm an environmentalist. I have an electric mower, so I push my mower with a power cord. And it's very annoying, but it's so much cheaper than gas, better for the environment. And I have like 1,000 square feet to mow. This is my car, a black Malibu, and then here's the alley. And if you walk out here, you look way down there, that's the tower. So that's how close I live to downtown Indianapolis. Really enjoy it. Zombie apocalypse hits, we're screwed. But here's my tomato plants. I'm growing basil and tomato plants and 3 watermelons here. Starting to stake these up the vine so they grow up the twine. I still have to stake all the tomato plants. This one's starting to outgrow it, but basically, the theory being that you wrap it around this so it eventually grows up. My cilantro, if anybody is in the Indianapolis area and needs some cilantro, let me know, because this is just getting crazy out of hand. One of my favorite things to eat is basil and caprese salad, with basil with tomato, balsamic vinaigrette, tomato, mozzarella. It's really good. Got one cherry tomato that's not really growing too fast, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think I have a couple early girls. This is a big beef. That's a San Maranzano over there. Just different varieties of tomatoes for different uses. These are my peppers: rosemary, basil, strawberries, and oregano, and more catnip. So I've got some peppers here growing on the vine, which is cool. So it's a lot of fun, and it just kind of takes your mind off of all the horrible shit that's happening in the world, and highly recommend growing a garden. It's a lot of fun. So let me take you down to the cable cave. Now we are in the basement of this 130-year-old house that we're renting. So this is just all like concrete. So we let Eleonora just have this whole space, put a little swing on here, and her little friends come down here and just have the time of their life playing, and they can bounce balls off the wall, and they've colored on it, and nobody's gonna care because it's the basement. This is the history section. This is actually a wooden podium. I bought a podium for a video idea that I never actually followed through on, but I have one if I ever want to give speeches. These are history books. You'll see the rest of the book collection upstairs. And then these are library books that I've had checked out for a while. India, China, NATO, the Cold War, Ukraine, Reputation, Homeschool Heroes, all that stuff, Chechnya. And I'll go to the library and check out a lot of books and thumb through them. I don't read all of them, obviously, because it's just hard to do, but you kind of read 2 or 3 books. Like, let's say you want to do a show, or I want to talk about Chechnya or Russia. You don't necessarily need to read all these books, right? You read like 3 or 4 books, and then when you thumb through, you sort of get like the vibe. And you can pick out little new facts. So that's a lot of what I do is I read like 2 or 3 anchor books on a subject, and then use library books to kind of go through and pick out different facts. And there's a lot more in these books and in my head, I think, than makes the air a lot of times. And that's okay. But I think to give like a very basic understanding of something like Russia and why we're here with NATO and all that, you've got to do a lot of reading to know what's simple, what's basic, what are the themes. Just to kind of open up some of these books. Maybe this could be a series. This is one of my favorite books on the founding of America. Ellis's book on the founding brothers. It won a Pulitzer Prize because it kind of like took the mystique out of the founders and made them seem like real people. Robert Kaplan is a really well-known foreign policy guide. I think this may be like a revisionist history guy. I haven't read that one. If you haven't listened to the History of Modern Politics, we did one of our first episodes on Bede, who was this English historian in the 800s who basically is responsible for setting the template for all of English thinking. And it's amazing how those early writers, when very few wrote and little got published, really set the template for everyone. Thomas Ricks is an amazing author on the Iraq War and Churchill and Orwell. He just has a book out. The Real Lincoln, this is kind of a revisionist history of the Civil War and the real Lincoln and what a tyrant he was. This is a great book. I recommended this at the beginning of the pandemic. And honestly, if you read this, you got a really good, solid foundation of what idiots we would be during the pandemic. H.W. Brands, one of my favorite history authors. So yeah, I could just go, if you guys want, through these stacks of books sometimes and or through my bookshelves, just give you recommendations on what to talk about. What's this one? The Hitler Salute, the meaning of a gesture, that's really interesting. Yeah, so just a ton of books that I'll hopefully get to read before I die. One of my things is just kind of collecting knowledge and knowing how knowledge exists and flows together and works with each other. And that's really fun for me, just to kind of map out what's important in a subject. So this is the Cable Cave. So this is our junky storage area back here. We're just like our keepsake junk. And then we have like food storage over here, and then just house junk here. But I've got these tubs, and there's litter boxes. Got this shelf here full of junk. Those tubs back there, these two sides, these are wall stuff. You know, stuff like memorabilia and lighting and backdrops and cables and old switchers, and you know, and here we've got like cameras and mixers and all kinds of stuff. So yeah, we've got a lot of just, you know, microphones and stands, and there's a karaoke machine down there and a radio. So it just, you'd be surprised how much stuff. Oh, there's one spot and two spot. These are the cats that my wife swore would be outdoor cats, and she would take care of them and change the litter box, and they've never been outside once, and she's never once changed their litter. I got bamboozled on the deal, but one spot in particular here is one of the cutest cats ever, and so sweet, so we don't mind. This is kind of their domain down here in the basement. But yeah, like I was saying, you'd be surprised at just how much like junk you collect over 20 years of radio and podcasting and video work. How much just junk and bags and cases you would end up with. One of the things that Harry and I have been talking about doing is building out a second studio at his house. He has two houses, one of which he does not use. So some of that stuff will probably move there for our second studio because I have enough for duplicates. So, all right, let me show you my office. This is where I do a lot of thinking. You know, a lot of reading too. Yeah, so it's always good to have a peaceful spot in your house where you just kind of contemplate things. I'm gonna kind of expand it out here so you can see it a little bit better. But this is the office. Chair, wires everywhere, books everywhere, library cart, gear for a shoot tomorrow that I'm doing out at the racetrack with Bob and Tom, all my different books. This is the background that you see each week, the TV that I watch Andy Griffith and Duck Dynasty on every single day. I love these windows. It's such a bright room. It's the brightest room in the house, which really helps me. And it's got these trees, so these two giant maple trees that you saw up front that kind of left a nice canopy, makes it really private up here. It feels like a tree house. Then I got my closet. This is actually, I think, the thing that I love the most. I'll come back to it when I can kind of zoom in on stuff, but here in the closet, just got papers and storage and my vitamins, and then back over here is just storage of more tubs. I've got 3 more tubs of stuff and more boxes of stuff. I just have a lot of wires and a lot of backdrops and a lot of all kinds of junk. And then the books. So the different bookshelves, I don't know how many books you can kind of see here. This is Maya's Mask. Gave it to me. Joshua Sexton gave that to me. Brian gave me this. My favorite song is Simple Song. I forget the name of the band, but it's the lyrics. It's the song that reminds me of Reagan. I love it. He gave that to me as a gift. This water bottle here, with the gaffer's tape right here, I was the last media person in the Trump speech at the state fair, and it was on his podium, and it's got some of Trump's hair on it. That map, that globe has the USSR. I got it as a kid, so it's really outdated. Sprinkle spangles, my different Bibles. This is the Christian section, so I've got all my Bibles, a bunch of like Christian books, along with some history books. Down here, this is a plaque that I got when I had that pro-war rally supporting the troops. Various Bible commentaries. This is the writing section. I watch the TV every day. I either watch news or I literally watch Andy Griffith on Pluto, or Duck Dynasty on Pluto, or Bob and Tom. This is these are books that I'm actively reading, kind of in this space here. Joke books, writing books, language books, miscellaneous extra history, marketing, sales, all that stuff. And then on top, we've got history. These are a gift from Joshua Sexton with the various votive candles. Here's an example. Eleanor loves to take this one down and play with it because it's got her picture on it. And yeah, it's history. This is a David Letterman autograph that I got in 1994 off the internet, and the top 10 lists. And the top shelf is history. That is the Fountain of Youth water. And then over here is my Libertarian section. These shelves here, things like Healing Our World, Mises, Harry Brown, Michael Cloud, Libertarian, Ron Paul. You see The Road to Serfdom and Judge Napolitano. That's my Libertarian section. These 2 shelves are propaganda. I think if you watch the show closely, you know that language and how we frame things and how we talk about things is of great interest to me. And then some extra psychology and sociology. These 2 shelves are philosophy. And then down here is literature. I literally have this shelf of fiction, and it's all like classic literature. And then down here we've got Indiana and St. Augustine books. There you see Rabbit. And then these shelves here are all, well, except for these 3 shelves here, that's biography. George Burns, Bill Gates, Freud, Colin Powell, Hitchens, Cronkite. And then, so these 3 shelves and this full shelf, they're all politics. Money and Power, the new Jim Crow. I mean, I have a lot of different stuff. So if like one book like The New Jim Crow, which is a great book, I recommend, offends you, then like stay tuned. You'll see Pat Buchanan, and if that offends you, then you'll see, the bell curve, and then above the bell curve is the book about how the bell curve is wrong. Black Political Thought and the David Axelrod book are next to Thomas Sowell's race books. You've got Theories of Domination next to Mike Lee. So I just try to read a very broad, so you want to talk about race right next to Mitch Daniels. Burnham next to Jesse Ventura. The Case Against the Greens, which is a really interesting book about ballot access law and how they've continually tried to keep the Green Party off of the ballot. You know, if the real Anthony Fauci in San Francisco and COVID operation makes you mad, then, you know, there's something else on the shelf that you'll like. So, and down here, you know, underneath Black Political Thought is my complete Glenn Beck collection. I have almost all his books. Down here's my Duck Dynasty collection. I have almost all the Duck Dynasty books. I genuinely, I'm not kidding, Reagan Hates It, one of the few podcasts that I get time to listen to that I just love to relax to is Phil Robertson's podcast, Unashamed, really good Bible study podcast. And then Cy has a podcast called The Duck Room that I think is just hilarious. So, like, those are probably my go-to podcasts along with The Remnant from Jonah Goldberg. If I'm just trying to chill out and, you know, garden. I've got like 1,100 different subscriptions in my podcast feed. One day I could go through that and just talk about some of the shows that I like. But I like those just because they're kind of silly. And then I've got my little library cart. So these are books that I'm kind of reading now, where I read every day. Like, I always tried to read a little bit of, you know, the Oxford of English Verse out of the Harvard Classic collection. I have the entire Great Conversation, the Annals of America, and Harvard Classics. So Harvard Classics, this guy 1919, I believe, 1916, put together a 6-foot bookshelf of all the great classics of the Western canon, and then it was copied and followed by the Britannica's The Great Conversation, the greatest books in the world by Mortimer Adler, and it's a big long collection. I just don't have shelf space, so they're in plastic tubs in the garage. The Annals of America is like, this is a pretty interesting series. So it's all documents, and I haven't dove into this too much, but it's like Columbus's journals and John Spark about Florida and the first charter of Virginia and John Smith, William Penn, and it's all basically the first person sources. So really cool. And on my desk I keep some writing resources like dictionaries and thesauruses, and I have journals that I write in and all that stuff. AP, Mencken, the American language is amazing. Everything by Brian Garner is really good. You know, if you don't feel like you're an educated person, an Incomplete Education is a really great guide for kind of helping you pick and choose what you should learn about. And then on the bottom, just various Bible study resources, you know, other books. Right now I'm reading about On the Wire about how to create a narrative podcast, a storytelling podcast. And then I use these bags like crazy. Like, these are books that I'm reading. Like, if I want to read up here, I can read them up here, take them downstairs. This one's kind of got like more Bibles in it. These are books. How to Shoot Video That Doesn't Suck, Pilates for Men. It's a really interesting book on NATO enlargement by the Cato Institute. Basically throwing cold water on NATO and why it's bad and it will start a war. This was before Putin was in charge, when it was done too. Guide to News Writing, What is Reformed Theology, Contentment, just trying to be content in where you're at. It's an interesting little book on money and just kind of being a giver as opposed to a taker and making a difference. So I think you can probably tell just by the stuff that I read and watch and kind of have hanging out here. Back there is the magazines that I subscribe to, that y'all help me subscribe to, quite frankly. I'd like to do more Christian content. It's just a big part of my personality, and I've always had the podcast focused on libertarian stuff and politics, and I just, as hard as I try, I just can't get back into it. This is a rumble roller. It's great for getting knots out of your back. I have the entire collection, almost every book. So if you got almost every book There's my magazine rack. I get probably 5 or 6 different subscriptions. So looking at the libertarian stuff, there's more Christian books that I'm reading at the moment. One thing I want to work on is a storytelling podcast about the history of Jesus that goes through like the archaeology and the history and like the hardcore stuff that actually like proves that Jesus existed. And that's what a lot of these library books are. I'll go and check out a bunch at the library and then kind of go through them and see what book is worth buying so I can highlight it and mark it up. So I have in the back of Ron Paul's Revolution, I don't see it. Where's Revolution? So in the back of that book, he has a reading list. And a few years ago, just trying to get some tax write-offs going, went on eBay and bought most of them. So I have a ton of stuff. This is a great book, Visions of Liberty, by the Cato Institute. Kind of some real-world solutions to big problems. Really like that. Libertarian Mind's a dry yet good look at kind of the basics of libertarianism if you want to brush up. Free market environmentalism, rethinking the Great Depression. Freedom and Virtue is a really interesting book. It's kind of the conservative and libertarian debate about morals and how much morals should you bring to your government. Here's the Revolution. And so at the back, he's got a reading list for a prosperous and free America. I went through and I bought all those. Some of them are kind of old, but it's really interesting stuff like the antitrust and monopoly, the income tax, the root of all evil, labor policy of the free society. So that was really cool. This is my bobblehead of Tom Carnegie. Got my Hillary Clinton. I got these two in the primary in Indiana when I worked in talk radio. Same with the Sam Adams Alliance. My little George Bush and Reagan. I've had this since 2002 when I was a Republican. Yeah, so lots of libertarian books. This is a great book. You want history that reads like a fiction book? So good. I read like 2 or 3 of Eric Larson's books. You don't know much about Jesus? This is a great book, Case for Christ. This is really important in kind of like giving me the archaeology and history of Christianity, kind of tearing apart some of the arguments against it. I thought that was really good. So I mentioned, I'll close with this. This is like 20 years of work. All these events represent podcast movement or races I've worked as staff. This will be my 10th year working at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Here's my pit pass for the Brickyard 1 year. Indiana State Republican Convention, media. This is the convention where I stopped being a Republican. When they kicked out the Ron Paul delegates. You can see CPAC 2003, IUPUI, my little Bush sticker. Bob and Tom events. This was Cincinnati 1 year. Libertarian Party of Indiana when I was I think this was 2010. Yeah, 2010. Wayne Allen Root. What a mistake that guy was. Hobnob. Media for the Hobnob. Yeah, all kinds of stuff. I think this is this is podcast movement. No, that's the radio show, the NAB radio show. LibertyCon. Let's see, do a few more here. Podcast movement, Libertarian Convention, race, Bob and Tom. Done some F1 races, private test events. There's Hillary. When I was media at the Hillary event, media at the Barack Obama event, media at the 2008 Democratic State Convention. So I've gotten to go to a lot of cool stuff as media. I love media. It's such a, like you should get into media if you're young and listening to this and don't know what you want to do with your life, because you get to do a lot of cool stuff. So with that, I say thank you for just kind of taking a tour of my junkie life here. Let me close these doors so you think that I'm not a mess. Got my stand-up workbooks here. Comedy writing secrets. I have to be honest, it was a lot of fun to write stand-up and do stand-up. And I did a lot better than I thought. So let's go down and you can say hi to Squish. She's the cutest. Oh, there's my underpants on the floor. If you don't have an acupressure mat, I lay on that thing every night. It's amazing. It's so good.
He's upstairs working.
There's my cute wife.
What's up?
And her best. Hi, how are you?
Who are you talking to?
The patrons.
Oh, my stars. Okay, we're not live, are we?
No.
Oh, okay, that's cool. Yes, you may. Tell Daddy what you were playing with at the neighbor's house.
Snizzers! I was doing it very careful.
Yeah.
Aw, I'm so proud of you.
Yes.
Tell the people what you've been doing for your sandwich maker.
Then party.
Yay!
It's about time.
All right, say goodnight. Goodbye.
Bye, I'm the mom.